Good morning, everyone. Hello, Noah.
Hey, how's it going?
Good and happy to have you here. How are you doing?
It's been a tough morning. It's been a little challenging emotionally, and that's actually a good way to segue into the talk about regenerative communication, because a big part of regenerative communication is speaking from the heart and sharing vulnerably. And I would be a hypocrite if I were to sit here and pretend to be okay, but not be. And it would be a good example of the cognitive dissonance a lot of us have between our declared values and our embodied values. So I don't want to sit up here and tell people to be vulnerable and then not embody that myself. And I know you're having a little bit of a challenging morning too, if you wanted to share something or just what you're feeling right now.
Well, first I want to thank you. And by the way, everyone, this is Noah Appelbaum from the Loom Studio, and I wanted to introduce him properly, but I love the way that he actually just went straight into the meat of how the importance of vulnerability in regeneration. So yes, I'm also going through a difficult moment. I think a lot of us have been. I've had coming back to Tulum has been a little bit of a challenge for me, but it's actually been good. So, and I'm regenerating myself while I'm here, and so it's been regenerative for me in many aspects, degenerative in others, but the most important thing is what needs to happen. So Noah, so we're here for RegenWeek, and we're all here for regeneration and catalyzing global regeneration. What does regeneration mean to you?
Well, I like how you brought up that even though this is called Regen Week, there's sometimes some irony or hypocrisy of degenerative ways that come through even amongst this sheen of regeneration. And namely, what I'm here to talk about is my perceived the gap in the regenerative community. We claim that whole systems thinking is a key part, and it is, but if we're going to embody whole systems thinking, that means we need to give every realm of regenerative thinking its due course. And I believe regenerative communication and community building and the invisible infrastructure of communities versus the visible is often neglected. And I think we all can agree on that visible infrastructure and built environments and community is a necessity, and we all focus on it. But I think a lot of times what gets neglected as an afterthought is the invisible infrastructure. And rather than the built and physical systems, the ideational systems and the maybe the social environments, we can say. And so my work is to bring that into the regenerative movement, because if we're going to embody whole systems thinking, we need to look at the whole system of the regenerative movement and not just the ones that we can see.
That is so important. It's absolutely, I love, what you're doing and how your work is doing that, specifically bringing that to light, bringing out the importance to the community and to the world of the importance of these regenerative communications and the values that one is supposed to embody, because there is that's kind of like, that's where regeneration really starts. So tell me a little bit with first, do you want to maybe expand a little bit more on what you're doing with the Loom, or any of the other projects that you're involved with? I'd love for the audience to learn a little bit more about you and your regenerative projects focused on regeneration. Thank you.
Sure, absolutely. Yeah, so like I said, I think there is a blind spot in the regenerative community, which is a bit ironic, like I said, to claim whole systems and then focus on a few. And I think the one that's interested me the most is community building. So I see myself as a community builder as much as anything else. And at least that's my interest. Maybe I haven't embodied it yet, but that's my goal. I feel like that's my role and my skill set and the gift I have to offer. And so that's what I'm headed towards, just having the chance to join more communities and get involved in that space and really dive into authentic relating and just group circles and all the things that breed connection and thus community. Because to me, we were talking about vulnerability, and to me, vulnerability is a cornerstone of regenerative communication. And the reason I believe that is vulnerability creates connection. Because when I say to you, I'm feeling sad today, it gives you a chance to say, wow, me too, I thought I was the only one.
100%, and that's so important, and that's also one of my tenets, and it's also one of the core, for me, it's a principle of it's something that I'm openly saying I'm embodying this, and it's, you know, and it can be really difficult to do that sometimes. And this, not just, you know, amongst the regenerative community, it's actually kind of more of okay, but especially when you're going out there in the world and what your people's expectations are, and, you know, how you're supposed to be and how you're supposed to act and everything. Now I'm in a state of like, you know, I'm vulnerable and this is the reality of it. And, you know, if you are too, hey, here we are to share. So thank you for embodying that. I absolutely love and appreciate that. And I think it's important that the world knows and understands that, because it's also, it also allows for the opportunity for others to be vulnerable, like you said.
Yeah,
So,
and it feels good, doesn't it? I mean, for me, it felt good when you walked in and you shared how you're feeling, and it allowed me to then say, me too, and in that we feel less alone in our individual experiences, and I think that's where connection forms. And I think on top of that, if we're going to think of vulnerability as something that creates connection, you know, I think we can all agree connection creates community. And so I think in that way we can think of vulnerability as actually a rich cultural currency that actually creates community for us, and it exists in abundance. I can share it to an unlimited amounts, and you receive and I receive at the same time. And I think that's a really beautiful cultural token, we can say, and something that isn't really utilized and thought of in that way, but should be. And I think, you know, there's obviously there's limits. Like vulnerability can be weaponized, but I think we exist in a culture that devalues it so much that the emphasis has to be there on re-emphasizing it and understanding the importance it has in building community and building trust. Because if I'm not vulnerable, how am I going to build trust with someone? And so I think a lot of these processes are building trust so we can build resilient communities and want to work together because we trust each other. And yeah, I think that's a big part of my desire, and I think it's important to name too. I'm not here claiming that I'm perfect at it. There's plenty of times I don't embody the things I value and teach, and I think we're all hypocrites, but I think it's about noticing that and being okay with it and being self-aware, and I think that's the process that's important, not being perfect. So.
Wow. I am absolutely loving everything that you're saying. I resonate personally deeply with everything. I completely understand. You're 100% right. And I think those are the essential values of regeneration, and the things that need to be said more. And so regeneration, so going into, when was the first time that you maybe heard that word, or like when did you resonate, or when did you start like really, you know, kind of maybe going in that direction, and how is it, what is it for you exactly? Like when you're speaking about regenerative communications or regenerative work in any ways, what does it mean to you, and exactly around what time did it start having an impact in your life and you adopted it into your life? If you can share with us a little bit. Thank you.
Yeah, you know, I think it's something I'm still really understanding. I'd be lying if I said I felt like I really understand it, and I think a lot of us have different ideas of it, which is absolutely okay because it means different things to different people. But I think most recently where this came about was Barbara asked me to write a document on regenerative communication. It was supposed to be like a one-page document, something quick, and I don't do things quick and simple. I ended up writing 50 pages and diving in super deep and spending probably over 100 hours because it's just so nuanced and it's just so rich, really. And I realized I don't know what regeneration means, but I think a good place to start for the, I guess you could say, uninitiated is if you think of it as a math problem, degeneration is like a -1, and sustainability would then be like a 0, and regeneration then is a +1. So you're usually adding to the environment, but sometimes even that can be paradoxical, because if you're starting from a deficit and you're adding 1, you might just be getting to 0, and that sustainability is actually, you're adding 1, but you're getting to a place of sustainability. And so it's really tricky to get to the bottom of, and I think sometimes regeneration and sustainability gets conflated a lot, and people use them interchangeably, but they're not. And yeah, I think that it's something that's tricky to define, but that's what's made it so exciting. Is it's fun to be curious and explore, and I get a lot of joy from learning from others what it means to them. And I think that's what's important to share here is, you know, I know a lot of us in this regenerative movement, being open source, you know, being open source in our sharing is really important. And I think that's a value that's absolutely worthwhile, but also giving people their due credit is important. And this was definitely not mostly my idea. The vulnerability part was, but we had a team of people at the Loom that really came up with this. Troy Wiley actually provided the idea of whole systems thinking being a cornerstone of regenerative communication. And on top of that, Robert Schramm added the idea of sacred anger being an important process, because I think a lot of us grew up with dysfunctional relationships with anger. I know I did, and I don't think any of us, most of us didn't grow up feeling okay in our anger. It's dangerous, it's unsafe, it's unwelcome. And I think a lot of communication models devalue it in a way of it's violent, like nonviolent communication. There's some language around it, but I don't know that it's as accepting of it as it should be, because if you push away anger, you're not going through a healing process. And usually anger, actually beneath that is actually sadness, and beneath that is pain. And so if you allow that anger in and you manage it in a certain way, and there's obviously boundaries around it, which we're figuring out, you actually allow a regenerative process, because healing is a regenerative process. And so if you ignore anger, you're actually ignoring healing, and you're actually not permitting a regenerative process to happen. And so sacred anger is a really important part for me, and after Robert shared, of what regenerative communication means. And unlike other communication models, accepting sacred anger and actually welcoming it, saying, you know, this is actually a really beautiful opportunity for us to heal because of our relationship with our own anger and others.
Thank you for sharing that. Thank you. And I love how you said sacred anger. That's powerful. That's super powerful. And I do believe that that's how it should be, because, you know, it is sacred. It's something, and that if you suppress it, then you're very likely going to show up in life in a degenerative manner. So allowing yourself to kind of go through those emotions is about regeneration. And in regeneration, I personally like to say, and from the thought school that I come from, is you cannot transform the world, and you cannot have those outer impacts if you're not transforming yourself first. And that starts with vulnerability, and that starts with acknowledging the anger that you're feeling, and acknowledging everything that's going on inside of you, so that you can then process that and then go out into the world in a more regenerative manner.
Yeah, absolutely.
So thank you for bringing that up. It's absolutely sumamente importante. Putting a little Spanglish there. So tell me a little bit more about the Loom, and your work with the Loom, and just can you share a little bit more about that with us, please?
Sure, yeah, absolutely. So I guess we actually haven't done too many projects as of now. It's kind of just formed a year ago. Through the Weave magazine, which is a regenerative magazine, and out of that, this creative studio, multimedia creative studio, formed, and we're responsible for the branding of this event and other things like that, and the idea is like a regenerative studio essentially. But one thing I wanted to share, because I know we're running out of time, it seems like, is if I can jump really quickly into AI, because I think this really.
I do want to say
yes.
Thank you because I know the process that has gone through for the branding of this event, and for your work with Barbara and how it came out. I mean, look, if we all look at the logo, you can see that logo and how that logo is actually adapted to the local culture. It's a it's RegenWeek logo, but it actually has that Mayan feel to it, because it was in Tulum, and there was so much love that went into that. So I just want to say thank you for that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I wish I could take credit. That was literally all Flavia and Barbara. And again, going back into vulnerability or
did an incredible job.
They did unbelievable. Yeah, absolutely.
I am excited to be working with the Loom and the Weave, hopefully in the future. So
me too. I feel honored to be part of it. They kind of brought me in. They're the main people doing it, and I'm just lucky enough to be a part and help in little ways. So real quick before we end up in time, the AI. Yeah, I do want to share this, because the question is, what's the context? Why is this an important conversation now? And I think what grounds this is two things. One, as we shared, I think we have largely degenerative communication models. But the other thing is, at the dawn of AI, it's like we haven't even figured out how to communicate authentically, and all of a sudden we're starting to communicate. We're starting to automate our communication, and we haven't even figured out the authentic communication. Wow. And it's like we skipped a step there. And I think what's scary is, they talk about, there's this metaphor called the canary in the coal mine. And the idea there is that the canaries were brought into coal mines as a sign of danger, imminent danger for humans. And when the canary died because of toxic gases, humans knew, I need to leave the mine. And it's a messenger, it's a sentinel species. And Kurt Vonnegut famously said that artists are a canary in the coal mine in society. And when artists are not well, it's a sign of a society being deeply unwell. And right now, if you look at Hollywood, what happened last year there was a 5-month strike in Hollywood, and it's the first time in history that all three types of creatives, artists, writers, and directors, came together as one to fight against AI because their jobs are at stake. And I think that speaks volumes that that was the first time that happened, and they came together because this is such a threat to survival. And that's our modern day canary in a coal mine. And I think it, there's a lot of artists having existential crises, including myself. I was just entering into freelance writing, and then it just collapsed. It became obsolete almost with ChatGPT. Why would someone use me if they can just do it themselves and maybe even do it better, unfortunately, potentially. And so, I think that's the context that makes this conversation important. Is I think we're getting further and further away from creative thought, and not just with social media and all the ways we distract ourselves in modern technology, but with AI, and we're headed to a world where there's not going to be a lot of authenticity. And the last thing I'll say on that, because I think it's important, is I believe that generative AI is inherently degenerative. It's not regenerative. And the reason is humans are made of the head and the heart, and AI doesn't have a heart. So it's inherently degenerative, and that's not whole systems thinking. If you're thinking of whole systems and humans, a human contains thoughts and feelings, and it doesn't have feelings. And so for that reason, I think AI is inherently degenerative.
Thank you so much, and thank you for bringing such powerful and important aspects of regeneration to the work. And thank you for sharing all that. I'm personally been extremely moved and grateful and happy to have you, and excited to actually dive a lot deeper into these conversations with you. So thank you for being here,
Thank
Noah.
you.
Appreciate it. And may your words go out into the universe and spread and expand like the catalyzation that we're doing here with regeneration. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Oh, sorry. So, hello, Stephen. How are you doing today?
I'm doing fantastic.
Excellent. Welcome to RegenWeek.
I'm excited to be here.
Awesome, awesome. Well, we're excited and grateful to have you, and we'd love for you to share a little bit more about who you are, what you're doing, and maybe you introduce yourself a little bit to the crowd so that we can start with that aspect, and then we're going to go deeper into regeneration and understanding what your thoughts are on that.
All right, well, great. So yeah, my name is Dr. Stephen Schwartz, and I'm the president and founder of Bioharmonic Technologies, which is a human optimization technology company that works with sound, light, frequency, and vibration for clearing cellular trauma and regenerating the tissues for optimizing human physiology. And
Wow.
my background, I'm a chiropractor by license. I've been specializing in reversing chronic degenerative conditions, allergies, and autoimmune diseases since 2000 using exclusively vibrational techniques and technologies. And we basically were running a last resort clinic for 16 years in Denver, Colorado, developing biofeedback systems. And then really it ends up coming to the end user of how can you change your biochemistry through bioresonance and transform and transmute lower degenerative conditional processes and lead to a new hyper level of vibration. And I wrote about this in a book. I'm also an author called Primal Resonance, Discover the Secrets to Health, Vitality, and Optimal Human Performance. It talks about the top 10 ways on how to reverse aging and degeneration using sound, light, frequency, and vibration.
Wow. I'm definitely excited to read it. I'm going to be looking into that. I think it's absolutely essential to exactly what we're talking about, to regeneration, starting with yourself. So I think I have a little bit of an idea of what you might say, but I'm going to still ask you.
Sure.
What does regeneration mean for you specifically?
I mean, regeneration, so I think to understand regeneration is to reverse, is what's degeneration, which is a breakdown of how can you create a process of proliferation. Proliferation of, now I'm a doctor, I'm a scientist, so I think in terms of a breakdown of tissues, and really when we look at the underlying science that works on energy inside of our cells, you can create a process of cellular, we have enough energy for a lifetime. So living in these three-dimensional spacesuits, why do we age in the first place? We ever look at this process and we talk about things like free radicals and toxicities and mental constructs and things like that. They all lead to a process of inflammation. Okay. And the equation, and I talk about this in my book, inflammation leads to acidity, and acidity leads to degeneration. So we can reverse that with, to reversing inflammation is alkalinity and regeneration, where we get a proliferation of cells. And we've seen changes with that as well, just using vibrational resonance. If I could share an interesting, Fabien Marmon, who is a French jazz musician, actually, and sonic alchemist, he did a study where he took cancer cells and healthy red blood cells, exposed them to different musical modes, frequencies, and showed that basically there's a specific musical mode which I'm not going to talk about here because it's just for time purposes, but it was exposed to the cancer cells, and when putting them into harmonic resonance, the cancer cells exploded. But using that same regenerative frequencies, the same musical modes into healthy red blood cells, they regenerated. And that premise is really what I've been working with since 2007. Wow. And I've been one of the foundations of my career, and because I know that everything is regenerative. Everything can heal. Even they used to talk about how the nervous system, you could never regenerate your nervous system. Now science has proven that that's not the case.
When you say everything, you mean everything everything can be regenerated.
Okay, so I'm talking about the body, but really everything on this in the universe is,
Listen up.
the first law of physics is that matter cannot be created or destroyed. It just gets
that is
regenerated. So when something is broken
100%.
down, it comes back out, and that's the whole toroid when we're looking at quantum physics, the internal spirals that come out, even from a cosmotic perspective, wormholes into another dimension. You lose yourself into one reality, it opens up to another reality in another world. So this technology that I created, one of the terms I refer to them as interdimensional portals,
Okay.
which can be very Star Trekky, or like what are you talking about, interdimensional portals? But if you think about what's a portal, it's a doorway and a gateway, or a gateway. And what's a dimension? It's a measurable space. And so what's the space? How do you move from one measurable space to another? Through a doorway, through vibrational resonance. So if you're living in a place of degeneration or disease or dis-ease, how can you change your vibrational resonance and align yourself into a new dimensional reality? And here's the key, of your choosing. So we live in a dimensional reality in this current space right now, but how do we take command of being able to align ourselves to a dimensional reality that we want to be aligned with?
And how do you do that? And how do you, so I also see that as because you're wanting to get yourself out, so you're wanting to get to a different dimensional reality that would be regenerative for you. And this is going into the inner aspects of regeneration. I think it, again, starts with the self, right? So this is super important. So how do you do it? How would you do that?
So there's two components to it. There's some aspects that literally take energy from our bodies. And a lot of times the world that we live in is toxic. I mean, we live in a toxic world. We really can't diet. The food that we eat, the air that we breathe, the water that we drink. And really what's the number one most toxic thing that all of us are dealing with, regardless of where we live, is the thoughts that we think. So all of these components are what can cause either regenerative activations or degenerative activations. So really, if you're eating acidic food, you're creating inflammation. Inflammation, by our equation we talked about, leads to degeneration. If you're eating more alkaline foods, it leads to more regenerative processes. Water the same way. Even the air toxins we talked about the same way. Your body is constantly having an elevated immune system. So one of the processes we worked with was, how do you eliminate infectious agents? How do you detoxify the body? And how do you really raise your vibration? And what are the feeding what are the key feeding factors into this process is really, I think, raising your vibration. And how do you really do that on the cellular level?
It's super important. I mean, it's, again, to me, and this is, I believe it's been a common thread between a lot of the interviews, but it's, you cannot, your vibration is really going to depend, how you're vibrating is going to really depend on how regenerative or not you are showing up in the world, and it's about embodying it. So, but at a cellular level, I mean, it takes it even deeper, so yes.
Well, you vibrate, it originates at your cells. I mean, and even when we're looking at other like biohacking technologies and things like that that's coming in, if you're affecting the field, okay, so this is a term known as epigenetics. Genetics is how your cells are expressing themselves from the environment out. So if you're living in a degenerative environment, and it could be from a loved one, it could be from a family member, it can be from the space that you're living in, society, all of these, society, the constructs for which we're operating, these things can all be feeding in acidic information that operates at a very specific interplay in our biochemistry called signal transduction. Signal transduction is how our cells communicate. And at the very beginning of that equation there's a receptor site that interacts with the environment, and that receptor is made of something called the living connective tissue matrix. It responds to the environment through vibrational resonance. Wow. That's what it does. That's how it operates. So what is the vibrational resonance that's connecting with that receptor site is what's going to dictate the chemistry that is created. And that chemistry is going to be negative or positive. And it's really kind of just that simple. Now, we're made up of 100 trillion cells, and if we go inside of one of the 100 trillion cells, we have a process known as photonic emission, which is when there's a spark of light and energy is released. And that essentially is what creates our energetic field. So if we can influence that, that is what's going to sprout out our vibrational resonance, our energy field.
That is what's going to catalyze and expand that potential that is needed in regeneration. Amazing, amazing, incredible conversations. And can I ask you, in your work in regenerating, in cellular regeneration and through vibrations, which in frequencies, I mean, there's such importance there in so many different aspects. What trends are you seeing, for example, into the future? Like how is this movement of the regenerative movement that's now maybe, I mean, I think maybe in your work it's a word that was probably like you've been engaging with for a while, but maybe not in the aspects that it's now being engaged with. So maybe going into, when did you actually start using it fully into the work that you're doing, and also what trends are you seeing in that space in your particular work and the aspects of regeneration? Thank you.
Yeah, it's a great question. Really, I mean, I'm a chiropractor. My undergrad's in sports medicine. I went to chiropractic school to work with sports athletes, with sports injuries. But really, I ended up having like a spiritual awakening in 2000. And what that spiritual awakening was the effects of energy on the body. And when I said as healing people, I was like, okay, if the aspects of disease is the breakdown of healthy tissue into a degenerative process, then how do we create a regenerative process? And so what I've been seeing is there used to be kind of these glitches in the nervous system, just like a computer system. We could go in and put an energy correction into the field and it would change. Now we're seeing these core factors from our environment, the food we eat, the air that we drink, the air that we breathe, the water that we drink, and the thoughts that we think, all of these components are feeding into a toxic degenerative process. And so being able to go in and work with the trends I see is autoimmunity, chronic degeneration is on an all-time high. I mean, COVID was a byproduct of a planet who is going through an evolutionary raise of its vibration.
Thank you for mentioning that. That is absolutely true.
So the technology, so in the healing arts, as we're closing this down, the healing arts are not about things you're going to put in your mouth. It's about things that's going to raise your vibration energetically. And you're going to see that the things three-dimensionally are not really working for us the same they used to, because we are moving away from this three-dimensional space into a higher vibrational resonance. So resonance technologies are now going to be not so much like luxuries, but more the new norm of the new earth science research for humanity.
Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing that. And my sister actually works in the space and we have my niece is in a bit of a process, and she is using resonance and frequencies to heal her. So I completely understand it's so important for that. Are there any last thoughts that you'd like to share for us here in RegenWeek? Like, how has it been for you? How can people contact you? And you know, what's inspired you? And just to make it last minute thoughts.
So, I mean, I'm really inspired about being in Tulum. I've lived here since 2020. It's just a place of creative, energetic vortex energy, which I really love. So I love being here to raise my vibration. You can contact me. Bioharmonic Technologies is my company. You can, on Instagram, I'm really active on Instagram. Dr. Steven Schwartz, or Dr. Vibe, Dr. Vibe on Instagram is the best way to contact me there. And what's been great is the community speaking about how do we expand and regenerate not just ourselves, but this planet. And those are conversations that I'm wanting to not just be a part of, but contribute to the raising the vibration of the planet and harmonizing humanity. And I invite everybody to change their vibe to change their lives.
Ooh, I absolutely love that. Thank you so much for being there, and thank you for those beautiful thoughts that I totally resonate with, and they're super important to do. So
thank you.
Thank you. Pleasure. Well, hello, Caleb.
Hi
Welcome.
there. Hi, hi.
Welcome to Region Week live streaming here. How are you doing today?
Oh, I'm doing fantastic. Feeling it.
Wonderful, wonderful. You're feeling the Region Week emotion going on, and we're on our kind of last thread of the day. So can you, Caleb, introduce yourself maybe to the audience and share a little bit more about who you are and what you do, just as a small introduction, and then we're going to dive a little bit deeper into regeneration and the different aspects of it and what your view of it is.
Oh, my pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Yeah, my name is Caleb Garcia Taylor, and I'm here for the Regen Week, just enjoying the vibe here. My background is in fashion and clothing design, and then I'm here doing a project, an eco project based in regeneration, opening up a clinic for earthing and detox and different healing modalities, energy healing, and really bringing me through to the next level of my ultimate manifesto to really, do regenerative healing off grid and in a restorative environment,
Beautiful, beautiful. Thank you, and thank you for sharing. And so, so we're all here. We're talking regeneration and so many different aspects of regeneration. I mean, I personally come from the built environment, but we have people that are coming just from wellness and healing methodologies, and so really regeneration can fit into everything pretty much. But when you hear the word regeneration, what does it mean to you?
Well, Francis, I'm really lately into like the etymology, the root words of English, the backwards, forwards, backwards, just like looking at the word itself and not having any predispositions about it. So when I look at the word regeneration, I'm looking at genes, because that's the word that pops out at me, like genes, genetics. And the word generation, taking it further, is like the next, and the word re in front of it, again, it's like the next manifestation of the genes that were before us. Because we are our ancestors. We are the biomaterial of our mothers, and our grandmothers. So we're just the next natural progression of those genes. And to me, it speaks to epigenetics, like reprogramming. What do we want to reset? All the R word, all the re words, and we're coming to that awareness that yes, we're in control of that. We have choices, and we can impact our genetic expressions based on our values and the things we want to manifest. So for me, it's like a very internal basis to it, where it starts inside with what we want to manifest within ourselves, and then it expands. And for me, it's an imaginative. I'll say that again. It's an imaginative process, because we're restoring our imaginative abilities, our imaginative functions that we kind of had a falling out, fall from grace from, and this is the mess that we're in. It's like, okay, we're getting back into ourselves, our imaginations, and then based on our imaginations is what we're going to create. It's about creation again.
Beautiful, beautiful. I absolutely love how you say that. And again, it's so interesting for me just coming from a different thinking of the word regeneration from the built environment, but also understanding that the awareness and that it has to come from within. Then you just took it to, that level of imaging, which is something that we actually do in land-based projects, and from the thought school that I come from, it's like you're imaging, using your imagination and as to, how you're thinking about something, how you're going to approach something, and that's going to have an impact. It's like, your thoughts become a reality, and how you're manifesting and showing up in your life. I mean, I am quite enjoying just listening to all the different incredible aspects of regeneration here. And so,
points of view,
I seriously, it's amazing. And when was the first time that, this word came into your life, and like around what time did you start maybe embodying or using regenerative values, or when did you start engaging with that? Maybe in your work, share us a little bit more about in your work, particularly when did your work start resonating with the actual term regeneration that is now being used a lot as a buzzword, but I can completely understand, because there is an entanglement there.
Right, an entanglement. That's the key word for me to kind of set me off, because I feel like it's always been ingrained inside of me, in my genetics, in my family background, even when I was trapped kind of in a box, like a corporate religious structure, it was still based on like regenerating new earth type of ideas, even though it was very much controlled and very much, yuck. I was in Istanbul and I kind of was able to break free of those limiting beliefs and really come into a true understanding of what that actually is, like the inside out thing without the limitations, understanding of who we are as, who we are as this divine being. And, I was able to really do a lot of soul searching and awakening at that point, and I think it just came full circle. It came together finally for me instead of just being fragmented. I just came into that appreciation. It was such a great time for me, to kind of break free from a lot of limiting beliefs and really experience the full realm of possibilities of what regeneration can be. And in its process, I mean, I'm reading a book now about it, just the human imagination from this 16th century author, William Blake, and just what is art and just really bringing it full circle for me. So I think it is still a process, but I think it's always been with me, but it's just becoming clarified and refined and taking on a greater, meaning.
Wonderful. And it is, and it really is a lifetime process. I think the majority of us are really not aware of it, and now it just has become, very popular trend, and not just in, in the built environment, and the wellness everywhere, in really every industry. I mean, we're here in RegenWeek, and we're talking about that where there's about 13 different ecosystems that we're targeting, that we're wanting to speak to and want to have here. So and it's listening to how that actually started and it's always been within us, but now it's an awakening, right? It's a rebirth, and so this is what we're doing here. And so as far as trends, for example, in your particular work and in the space that you work in, or maybe something that you'd like to share with us with regards to your work and regeneration and how you're embodying regeneration in your work, in your life, and then the trends that you're seeing into the future?
Absolutely. Well, I see just a huge trend in that area because we're all feeling it. We're all feeling the need to regenerate ourselves, mind, body, spirit. But especially right now, our bodies are really speaking to us like, yes, let's regenerate, let's detox, let's rebuild ourselves. So and it's just been incredible because I used to live in this area, and I was here, and my clinic I'm opening is based out of Playa, but I was doing coming to Tulum a lot 4 years ago before I went to Istanbul, and now I'm getting back, and it's just like, wow, just the community that's here now. And
that's what keeps me coming back.
Yes, and it seems like there's just tons of clinics with all these modalities and harmonic eggs and it's Dr. Stephen Schwartz that was just on right now with his vibe beds. It's just, just like unearthing all of the previous old world technologies with Tesla and William Reich that were like the forerunners. And that's where I see just kind of reclaiming that part of ourselves and just filling in the gaps and then just really accelerating to where, our ideal situations are,
Exciting.
So,
Isn't it exciting?
It is super
it's
exciting.
Exciting times to be here and exciting times to be where we are right now in so many aspects, and the opportunities to be able to regenerate ourselves with the availability and the possibility of this different alternative treatments and so important for the work that we have to do on the outside too, because it cannot it's
inside
very
out.
Inside to the outside, right?
I like that. Go in and you'll never go without. In and up, not out and down, right?
Exactly. So tell us a little bit about your clinic and what you just mentioned the clinic in Playa, maybe so how the audience can interact with you and go maybe regenerate with you. What is that project about?
Well, it's just combining everything I love. My background is in fashion design and textiles and clothing and expressing in colors and all that and just vibrancy, and but I've always been into alternative medicines and health and just longevity, and just taking deep dives into the energetic side of that recently, like I mentioned before with my awakening experience when I was in Istanbul. And I'm just putting together a space for earthing, It's like where the sky, where the earth meets the sky. It's like replete. It's a rooftop I'm taking over that's just for grounding, full of grounding mats that we run down with the grounding rods from the garden, and different healing modalities, energy devices. One that I particularly wanted to speak about because it's just so groundbreaking and it's so accessible for everyone. And this is the key point: accessibility. You know?
That is huge. Thank you for saying that. That's also
yeah,
another part of
yeah,
regeneration: accessibility, inclusivity. Thank you.
Inclusivity, yes. And these energy devices that I'm almost like 90% of done with the first one, but it's a very DIY project. Materials that are available at any Home Depot or, you know, very accessible things, but it's combining that technology from Tesla and William Reich, that orgone technology, but just with a very advanced, you know, like quantum physics version of it. And I'll tell you just a couple of fun stories about it, just to kind of whet your appetite, because just the power of something so, I don't want to say simple because it's very complex, but it is accessible, you know, and what can be done with it. And it's called bubble tech. And this essence of it is once you complete it, you have you have a bubbling device, you know, and it's tied to your biorhythm. And so what it essentially does, it creates a 2D space. And what is the thing about a 2D space? We want to go to 5D, blah, blah, blah. But everything starts at the seed level. Okay. You know, everything manifests at the seed, starts at the seed level and then goes up through the aethers and expands, right? So the 2D space is very special because it gives you access to that manifestive power like nothing else, you know, and it also, you know, it also just it's a non-polar environment, so it kind of cancels the duality. And I think that's in our society, the duality is something we really struggle with, you know.
It's huge.
Exactly.
It's huge. It's huge.
Yeah. So from a health perspective, the one that I'm creating, it's more of like a chamber. So so basically, it depolarizes that, for example, the harmful heavy metals, you know, and renders them inert, so that you can go ahead, your body can just go ahead and clear those out. And it also you know, it's anti-aging. It transforms all of the EMF and all of the radiation that we're being bombarded with into life force energy. They say once you set it up to look at the cell phone towers that are nearby, and that literally, I was in Istanbul, I could see the cell phone towers. The second day, they'll say birds will start gathering and nesting, and those are microwaves. You know, birds don't hang out on microwaves. The second day, I saw the birds coming and just creating their community because it's life force energy.
Beautiful.
Yeah,
Amazing.
yeah, really great. And
that is something that you will be having.
Yes, as a healing. It just
amazing.
creates tangible euphoria. You'll notice things like, you know, you have to put in your intentions, like to just have your electronics keep working, because it's a non-polar environment, you know. So I did that, and then funny story, like the next day, my upstairs neighbor, this big German lady, she just comes barreling down, like with her hair dryer and her curling iron. My electronics don't work. My electronics don't work. I'm like, oh. She's like, you were working on some science experiment. What did you do? And then she's like, here, look it. And she plugs it into my outlet, and it works perfect. You know, so I had to go back and go, okay, make sure all the electronics in the entire building are working. You know, and then I was joking with my friend, just like, oh, the next thing you know, there's going to be some midget that's feeding me grapes. And, you know, my Turkish neighbor, old couple, they were so cute. He just comes, he's very short. And so he comes knocking on my door, and he just like, oh, here's some grape pudding we just made for you. Some grape pudding. I'm like, what? This is crazy. It's just so many stories like that. It's really, really amazing technology. So I hope to introduce that and just kind of keep workshops to how people can make, you know, create these devices even themselves. You know?
Amazing. That is super exciting. And can you maybe share a little bit with the audience as to how we can find you after? I mean, we're here RegenWeek. A little bit, share how we can contact you to go regenerate ourselves with this incredible technology as well.
Exactly. Well, you can find me. I'm just getting back on the social media and doing the marketing stuff, even though I'm a marketing guy. But I'm just starting the pages for these things on Instagram. It's earthing. It's Okay, it's Earthing Clubhouse. EAR, Earth, the word earthing, and then Clubhouse, just with nothing in between. And then I'm on Nostr. Nostr is a protocol that's just across all apps and clients. If you're not on Nostr, check it out. And it's Caleb Wholeness Earthing Clubhouse on Nostr.
Okay. Wonderful. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for your
Yes.
inspiration. Any last words you want to share with the audience about regeneration and the work you're doing? Just last minute thoughts before we're closing out?
Yes, and I just my conversation this morning with Christina, which was so wonderful. Let go of those cords that tie you to the past, and get into the unknown. Shed your fear of the unknown, and just move with that energy of the unknown, and just trust the process that your imaginative vision will develop, and that you have your back, and you're the one that you've been waiting for us to save. You know.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Amazing. Thank you so much for sharing those
Thank
thoughts. Thank you for your
you.
advice.
Wonderful.
And lovely to meet you and learning more. And I'm excited to continue conversations in the future and maybe potentially going to Playa to your clinic when you open.
We would love to receive you, and thank you for this wonderful privilege. Thank you again. Ciao,
Thank you
ciao.
for being here. Awesome. Welcome, Eduardo. So
Thank
happy
you.
to see you and so happy and excited and grateful to have you here. Welcome to Regen Week and welcome to our live stream over here. So
Pleased to be here. Thank you.
it's Eduardo Esparza, and I'm going to let you share a little bit more about what you're doing, which is absolutely incredible and so needed. Please. So maybe share a little bit with the audience about it, Eduardo and Blue Dot, and we'll start with that and then we'll dive deeper into regeneration.
Great. Well, my name is Eduardo Esparza. I run an organization called Blue Dot Project. And Blue Dot Project right now is we're forming financial mechanisms for financing regeneration. So our goal is to get out of the box of the traditional financing. We typically think in financing in terms of private capital and private equity and venture and lending, or philanthropy on the other side, and everything is siloed. And so the financing mechanisms of the future, we need to engage in, innovation and thinking outside the box and how we can actually have different forms of capital working together to accomplish a goal. And the goal is regenerating Earth and creating prosperity for humanity and human beings and non-human beings all alike, right? And so that's what we're forming on right now. That's the core, is Blue Dot Project. We also have a hedge fund that is like driving capital into the formation of this entity. A series of entities is going to be something quite complex because we wanted to have penetration in the United States and then actually agency globally, wherever there's intention emerging. We also have a lot of initiatives to protect indigenous ancient wisdom. And there are some initiatives right now concentrating in Colombia with the Tejuna people, which includes the Kogis, Arawakos, Encuamos, and Wiwas.
That just emerged here as a result of this inspirational week, correct?
Actually, I have been working with the Wiwas for
I do
quite some
remember
time.
that. I do remember that. So, but this particular meeting with them was also with Regen Week involved as well.
Yeah, RegenWeek. To my surprise, I was not expecting to find anybody from that tribe here, and I just saw the first night that the Arawakos
Amazing
bosses were here, the big wise men. And so I had the opportunity to share what we were doing with the Wiwa tribe, which is in the north of the Sierra, and they were more in the northwest and the southeast. And I think we found a lot of opportunities to help promote the preservation of the wisdom and creating
necessary. It's essential. Thank you.
Yeah, exactly.
Thank you for the work that you're doing, and it's absolutely. I mean, none of us that are here would be able to do this and cannot continue in this work if we don't have the financing mechanisms to do it. So your work is, we're all grateful to have you, and it's absolutely essential. So let's go into a little bit of the different aspects of regeneration itself. What does regeneration mean to you? When did you start to, within your work, and you're coming from a finance background, from what I understand, because we met about a year and a half ago through this bioregional regeneration conference, I remember, and I know that you had a finance background a little bit into it, but was regeneration in your life before? Maybe share a little bit with us as to when did it start coming into your life, and what is the meaning for you of regeneration? Thank you.
Well, I always have some consciousness of what's, living in equilibrium But the true awareness of that there was a problem was not raised until Al Gore's movie, The Inconvenient Truth, that he presented the case for, hey, we have too much CO2, and so I started digging for the last 10, 15 years, and following COP and following what really the authorities are doing, how is leadership forming, how is capital aligning. I was an angel investor for startups and a consultant for startups for a long time. And that led me into the world of investments. So I was quite diversified in the world of hedging stock markets and crypto and all these things. So it was a point in time in which I decided just to shut down all the other initiatives around software and stop driving capital to software. So the world doesn't need another accounting software, right? Another CRM. We don't need that. So I'm going to dedicate my
looking
brain
for
time.
purpose. Sounds like looking for purpose.
Yeah, I remember the December 2021.
Wow.
When I took the decision to say, you know what, I'm going to deprioritize anything software and I'm just going to focus completely on climate. And in digging climate, I found out that there's, you know, my angle was investment. So I wanted to see where capital is flowing. And I saw that more than half of the capital was flowing into electrical vehicles. I'm like, that's not going to cut it. I mean, going electrical vehicles and putting solar panels is not going to cut it. So natural capital was a large, unattended bucket.
Yes.
We need $1 trillion flowing into natural capital. And we have 100 billion flowing into that category every year right now. And the reason is that there's no investability around nature.
Yes.
And so that drove me into the whole rabbit hole of understanding what will make nature investable and attractive for people to start actually respecting it. And so that led me to indigenous wisdom, right? Indigenous have been able to live in harmony with their environment for millennia.
Beautiful. I love that you're going right to the root, to again and again here is to the essence of things, which is also a regeneration, which is a rebirth. So you're channeling something which is absolutely essential, because again, we cannot regenerate the earth. We started with regenerating ourselves, and then with the intention of regenerating the earth, but we cannot do that anywhere if the financial capital is not flowing in that direction, and we know there's a lot of difficulties. Can you share a little bit with us as to how you're embodying regeneration in your work? And I mean, as far as like finances, we're talking about finances, and we know that there's such degenerative and extractive practices out there, and I know that you're building new models for out there. So maybe share a little bit more with us about what's happening in that direction, and to building regenerative financial models for Blue Dot Project and what you're engaging with. And thank you.
So first, to link this to the previous idea, we know that indigenous people are being successful at living in harmony with it. So the question is like, what can we learn from them? And what are the patterns of their social fabric that make them actually live in harmony? And how can we integrate that into a new form of development? So that's actually what's shaping the investment thesis of the project, is how do we learn what are the principles of operation that we can bring into a thesis of transformation?
That's beautiful.
And so the answer is kinship. So if we design systems for collaboration and systems for respect instead of extraction, then the whole dynamic changes. But we have to change financial incentives, and we have to change the role of capital in this whole transformation. So how do we come together? I'll give you an example of the transition to regenerative agriculture. If you are an industrial farmer and you are in debt, 90% of your profit comes from subsidies, and you're growing things that are hurting the earth.
Yes.
And this is a vicious cycle. In order to get out of that, you need to engage in a process of detoxifying the land and getting out of debt. All these things. This requires about 3 to 5 years of a valley, of losses. And nobody understands that in the financing for farmers right now.
No, we talked about this conversation. I remember we had this conversation over the phone when I was in Dominican, when we discussed, the producers, the campesinos that are producing cannot leave the traditional system because nobody's financing that transition, and their land needs to heal. But in that time, they're not working, they're not able to produce anything. They need to eat from their daily production. So
exactly. So that's how I'm embodying that. I mean, by bringing different sources of capital and objectives together into the same table, we have philanthropic money with some mandates for impact tied to SDG goals from the UN. And then we have also grant money to meet some objectives from a government agenda. Then we have private capital looking for a return. And impact as well, but I mean non-concessional. They're looking for a return. So the European Union with the International Bank for Development over there, that has showed a very specific, very good case for de-risking private capital. So basically they come in either as a guarantor for a loan during that period for transformation, or as an incentive for helping measure the results. The point is that non-for-profit capital can be mixed with private capital for-profit structures to achieve a long-term good result. The same thing can be applied for real estate, for energy transitions, and the formation of community and social structures, the social capital that is so
Beautiful.
much needed.
Beautiful. And I mean, I would love for the audience to know a little bit more about the direction that you're going with that project. I mean, I personally know it and I love it and that vision, and it's so much in alignment with some of the work that I'm doing, but I maybe share a little bit more about the direction. We're talking about really bioregions, land development. It's not just about the fact that you're looking at the way to finance this, but the magnitude of everything that's going on with the work that you're doing, and then also maybe some projects that you might be excited about, or that you're engaging with. You mentioned something that I loved the other day is this is the projects that I'm investing in for myself. So it's also something, the fact that you're looking at it as something that is also for you. It's not just a normal investment. It's something that you have to feel like you're going to also live there. I really loved listening to that the other day. So yeah, I'll just expand a little bit more so that the audience can understand. Thank you.
Yeah, so right now we're mapping the landscape. Okay. Mapping the landscape means understanding actually how can a regenerative community can come to life. Mm-hmm. And then there's physical infrastructure, which we're so used to, mm-hmm. right? So if we look at this from a developer standpoint, it's like the project's done when the buildings are done. Mm. And from the social fabric infrastructure side of things, actually that's the community formation. So mapping the landscape for us right now is really understanding what are all the pieces that form community, and really understand where the gaps are. What I'm getting right now is that we're missing some platforms for mm-hmm. community formation, so that investment capital can come in and be de-risked, because we depend on the success of the community. We want the community to be successful. So right now, in the middle of that, we need to understand that landscape very mm-hmm. well. And then the next day for us is actually designing the financing mechanisms for each one of it, so that we can attract the right kind of capital, either by vertical, by asset class, or a systemic approach. Mm-hmm. And so, yes, I mean, this is both a professional and a personal. There's no duality anymore. Mm-hmm. I mean, I do want to live in these communities. I've interacted with indigenous. I visited regenerative communities, and I love the concept of, it's a support network.
Yes,
it's a support network for prosperity.
Has it transformed your life? So that now that you know and you've gone through this process of landscape mapping, how has when was the first time that you heard the word regeneration? We'll do this, con rápido que puedas, and how has that transformed how you live and all of this very quickly, and then share any last thoughts that you have for us and how we can find you. Thank you.
Well, the actual concept of regeneration, I heard it from Joe Brewer for the first time. And I read his book, I met him, we walked together the lands of the delta of the Colorado River. I supported the design school for some time. I'm still a supporter, I'm a fan. And actually, he asked one question in one of the meetings that we had, and he said, you don't need me, you don't need leaders. I mean, you can do this thing yourself. Just like the water you're drinking today, where does it come from? Do you know? Do you know the state of the aquifers and the watersheds actually that are giving you that water?
That's a key word in this environment.
No, actually, I don't. I mean, I know that it's come from the Colorado River. I was in Mexicali at the time, so that led me actually to go into Peonia, one of the tributary regions of the Colorado River. I actually set up base there. So I said, we want to start a regeneration movement here, actually organize souls, and I wanted to just live there and be the inception of some big projects. That's still on the table, but I don't live there anymore. But that's how I try to incorporate this in my personal life as well.
You really have gone through a journey and traveling into different places to embody this aspect of it, and I'm personally honored and grateful to have met you and for the work that you're doing, for taking on such a challenge of being able to finance the Earth's regeneration. And is there anything that you would like to share specifically with the audience about your time here at RegenWeek? What do you need? I know that we all need what you're doing, so that's incredible. But what can we do for you to maybe help you map this landscape better? Is there anything that we can support you with also in our end, so that we can manifest this for all of us?
I think opening the conversation for what truly means regenerative financing and creating the forums for that. I mean, I'm happy to help and be part of that conversation, actually gathering more of the people from the impact world, impact financing world, impact investing, and help shape the future of financing as a transition mechanism to true prosperity.
Okay.
And so I'll say let's help make an open invitation to other investors to lean in and really dig into regeneration.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing that. Thank you. And thank you for being here. Thank you for coming to Tulum during Regen Week. I think a lot of us have really enjoyed having you and having your company and learning more. And you're an inspiration to many of us. And so, muchísimas gracias. Gusto.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here.
Thank you. I could go on forever. We can continue this conversation longer, which we probably will. But
We can go
thank
for
you.
hours.
Please, Eduardo Esparza from Blue Dot Project for the world, and he's taking on one of the biggest challenges, which is financing the Earth's regeneration. So thank you.
Thank you.
So welcome, Victor.
Thank you.
So lovely to have you here. So grateful to have you here. Thank you for coming to Regen Week. Thank you for coming to Tulum and blessing us with your presence and the work that you're doing. So we're here and we have a beautiful audience watching us and learning more about regeneration and your true inspiration in the field. Can you tell a little bit to the audience what is, just a little bit more about yourself, Victor Vorsky, and just maybe share a little bit about your organization, what you're doing, just to introduce, and then we'll go deep into regeneration now, just finding out a little bit more about what regeneration is for you, but after the introduction. Thank you.
Thank you. So my name is Victor. I live in Portugal. I've been in Portugal for 6 years. Before that, I've lived in many different places. I identify as from Earth, maybe European if you want to really put me down, but I spent a long time in Japan and it's definitely one of my spiritual homes. So in the regenerative space, I'm working on two key things now. One is building a village in Portugal, Ericeira, 45 minutes north of Lisbon, beautiful location. Going on that whole real estate community and that wild journey which so many people here are on, a lot of learning. And I'm organizing a festival, conference, gathering, a new form of coming together for the regenerative ecosystem. As the ecosystem, regeneration is about reinventing and rethinking many things. I think rethinking how we gather and how we come together is a key part of that. And I can talk more about it, but it's a festival, conference, trade show, gathering, all of those things in one. And I wanted to, and it's co-created, it's bottom-up and all of this. So I just wanted to really make clear that the things today I say about regeneration, it's my personal opinion. It's not the official opinion of the Gathering of Tribes organization, because the Gathering of Tribes is we're trying to be very strong about not being dogmatic about anything and inviting people into conversation.
Beautiful.
So it's my personal opinions.
Beautiful, which is an essential part of regeneration, and I believe that we all need to look into. Thank you for sharing. What does regeneration mean to you? When you hear the word regeneration, that has now, it's a buzzword, right? We started about, first it was sustainability, and still, we still have the sustainability ingrained into many things that may not even be sustainable. There's a lot of greenwash. Now you have going into regen wash. So it's just being used in all different aspects. And so, but we've also seen something, especially in these interviews, that there are so many different meanings for different people about what regeneration is about. And to me, they have actually all made sense so far. So I'm very curious to understand what regeneration means for you in your perspective and in your life and in your work and how you're embodying it.
So for me, regeneration means to keep on asking the question, what is regeneration?
I love that. That's wonderful.
And it might sound facetious, but I actually do mean it. It's a koan. And what it means to me is that regeneration is a process. It's a journey, not a destination. Anything, the second we try and put it into a box or write it down into a fixed kinds of thing, sooner or later, that's not going to be the right answer. I'm a huge believer in good questions, and good questions last forever. The ones that Greek philosophers left us, they're still valid.
I love the chat that you started keeping the conversation flowing. So.
Yeah. So for me, actually, it's more interesting if we both share the same question, but we have different answers.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, wow, we're both coming from the same ethos, and you think regeneration is this, for me it's this, there's a difference. If we both have the same answer, it's nice, it's validating, but it's not generative.
That's exactly, you just mentioned a key aspect. I mean, for me, and again, and thank you for saying it's a journey. For me, I have been like, this is regeneration and very kind of straight and like what I thought it was. And then I have learned so much in this journey that I'm, expanding my views. And I'm like, no, this is, there's so many different aspects to it. But you just mentioned something that is key, at least in, for example, land-based projects and the work and the community that you're working on, is being able to look at those different perspectives that everybody has as to it relates to a project. So you cannot expand the potential with also regeneration is expanding the potential of a project and expanding the potential of whatever you're working on, and bringing those different questions together from different people, from different perspectives, from different stakeholders. So that's a key aspect of regeneration right there that you just mentioned, is keep asking the questions. And so thank you for bringing that up. I think it's completely aligned. And so in your work today, tell us a little bit about what I would say what regeneration.
Can I
Yeah.
before we go to that,
Yeah.
can I add
Yeah.
one more thing?
Yes,
The other
please.
thing, because as part of the gathering, we've done questioning regeneration series.
I like that.
And
Awesome.
trying to generate the questions. And one thing that came to me is regeneration is a feeling.
That's true. Very true. I mean,
I'm still trying to figure that out. I'm a man. For me, feelings are for feeling, not for talking about. So just learning how to...
vulnerability is also that's where we go into the vulnerability aspect
So
of
just
regeneration.
learning to talk, but I think it's an interesting, because there is something, right? When it's regenerative, you can feel it, right?
Yeah,
You can feel it,
100%.
right? You can feel it.
And when it's
So
degenerative as
what
well.
is that feeling? It's an interesting idea. I'm starting to play with it.
And I think it's also about, you can also feel when it's degenerative. So when it's regenerative, I mean, it's the emotions. I mean, it feels good. It feels life affirming. It either feels life affirming or it feels non-life affirming. And so it's a good feeling or a negative feeling. So thank you for bringing that up, and thank you for all the questions. So tell a little bit more about your Portugal project. About you have the land-based project that you're working on in Portugal as well at the moment. You just mentioned 45 minutes away from Lisbon, and maybe your journey into going into that. We can share with the audience here.
Yeah, so we're working, it's 38 hectares of land, we're 4,000 square meters buildability, we're going through the planning process because it's going to be a fairly big project. It needs the investment, which means it needs to be all legal, also in Europe, and especially as a foreigner in another country, legal is the only way of doing it, so we're going through that process. I think an interesting thing that we've arrived at, what I think is definitely worth sharing, is need to really think carefully of, for a land-based project, how you organize and design the design team. I think of it as design, build, nurture, right? Because there's all of
Design,
the steps,
build,
right?
nurture.
What is the regenerative team? The standard way to build a real estate project is an architect comes in, they make a design, then they hire some people, and then, a few years later, the landscape designer comes, and a few years after that, the gardener comes with the plants, and they're like, the budget is all going, and they're like, okay, whatever, we'll put a lawn here and 2 palm trees, we're done. But that's clearly not regenerative. There's also the whole idea of metrics, right? I think it's really important. We can talk about regeneration, it's all really nice and happy, but investors and the world at large is
The
like, okay,
metrics.
show us some numbers.
Yes, thank you.
It's hard, but I think we have to engage with this, so we do come up with some metrics. So I found some amazing metrics people, but they need to be there from the start of the process, biophilic design, landscape, how you work with this. So I think you need to really think through carefully how you put together the team, who's at the table of the start, what are their roles, right? I think it needs to be a circle, not the usual pyramid with an architect at the top.
100%.
Which is very challenging, of course, for architects that are used to be sitting at the top of a pyramid.
Very much so.
But I think that's a key learning we've come to. Yeah. And then the other key learning is, like it or not, real estate means money. So need to have the,
it needs to make sense
it
in
needs to
ROI
make
terms for
sense financially, and I'm sorry, but if you're coming to a real estate project with a negative attitude towards money, you're either A, not going to succeed, or B, you're going to be miserable, most likely both.
Beautiful.
So just accept it and either find the right people who can make the abundance flow for your project, or just accept it and do it yourself.
That's major key points there that you mentioned. I love all of them, and coming from a background of real estate from 20 years of my life. I've been working in the real estate environment for 20 years of my life, and then started in regenerative development projects, or regeneration, if you will, 3 years ago. Everything is so much in alignment. You mentioned something about the design, build, nurture. And I'm in my own journey of regenerative development projects. I've been learning the integrative design process as a part of what I'm weaving into my projects and how we work at Smart Green Group. And so can you share a little bit more about what your process is and when you are engaging with, you know, that design team, the community for a land-based project, and how, you know, what that design, build, nurture project is, and choosing the people, choosing the actor. That's so important. I think in the way our approach, and I like to say our approach because I'm learning so much about all the different approaches, and I'm really, really enjoying, you know, seeing where there's things that are overlapping and things that are just different and that I can learn from. I think that's also a part that's regenerating me. But yeah, how are you going about that? The integrative design process, you choose kind of everybody, all of the stakeholders, all of the actors in the projects are there up front. How are you envisioning the process that you are working with in your project?
So, I mean, maybe the first key thing in our project is built along exit to community lines.
Okay.
So there is a project team. You can call it developer-led if you like. So we're the development team. Mm-hmm. And then the goal is to exit to community. I really, looking at the world, business, starting all kinds of projects, communities are really shitty at innovation. It's just not what communities are good at. There's a reason why design by committee is a derogative term. But communities are really great at keeping things going for the long term. Mm-hmm. So whilst small groups of tight project teams, visionary leader or a highly aligned team are really good at innovation, but are not good at keeping things for the long term. And by long term, I mean hundreds of years. So how can we combine both models? And that's where I think exit to community is a good combination. You get this high concentrated focused team, which gets rewarded for their work at the start. But in the long run, the goal is to hand over to the village owns the village and the community owns the land.
Beautiful.
So that's the model we're working towards, and we're still in early stages, like pre-planning, but our goal is to create a design team that has a biophilic expert and impact metrics experts with a great regenerative designer, architect, and planting nature experts all together from the start. Right now, effectively, all work is remote one way or another. Yes. So we want to start with a retreat, like a 3-4 day retreat to bring the team together.
Feel the land.
Yeah.
Feel the land. Beautiful.
And I think this is a key thing with regeneration and also in many ways with the new technologies that allows us to work much more human way.
Yes. Yes.
Right?
And the connection is
coming together as a group, as a team, cooking together, eating together, washing dishes together.
That's what makes the community.
Yeah, really it makes the community, but it also makes any team, any connection,
everything.
Right?
It's that is going into that deeper connection where you can actually really, get to know each other truly, because technology is wonderful, but at one point when you're face to face and you really connect at that level, it's really, I think, when things become real and authentic. So thank you for that, and I'm excited to continue to follow your work and learn more about your projects.
Thank you.
Just want to ask you, like, how do you, and with your life and your day-to-day basis, if you will, and outside of the work, like, just to close out a little bit, how are you embodying regeneration in your life? And I mean, like, maybe when the word came into your life, the word regeneration, and how that affected, and you're embodying it into your life.
So for me, regeneration was like this final, like an aha moment of finally I found my tribe. Because I've been, along my journey, I spent time investing money in new economic systems, learning about new learning systems, new ways of building organizations, connection to nature. And it all kind of always felt like I was either schizophrenic or unfocused until suddenly regeneration came and I have an umbrella under which all of my interests fit. So I was like, beautiful. Yes, I have found it. And I really love this combination of the energy that, at least for me, regeneration is, if you want to talk about spiral dynamics, whatever, it's teal. It's like, we're visionary, we believe in a better future, but we're also here to get shit done here and now.
Yes. Yes.
So that balance of, yes, more beautiful future, we build utopia for all, but like in the next 2 days, what are we going to do?
Yeah, exactly. Make it tangible. You know, it cannot remain aspirational. We have to get to the work and get it going and make it real, manifest it. Thank you so much for bringing that up. That's so important because a lot of these projects tend to stay in an aspirational stage, and that's not what we're looking for here.
And in my life, I mean, I think it's very early stages, so I have no idea what regeneration is. I hope to continue asking
We're
the
all
question.
learning. We're all learning.
But just even having that awareness, whether in a partnership or relationship or work, of like, that's not regenerative.
Yep.
You know, it's
Yes,
the same
so
thing as with,
important.
for example, nonviolent communication, which I studied. I'm crap at it, but just the awareness that communication can be violent, and having this in as the vocabulary between me and my wife, and being able to say like, no, wait, that was violent.
Yeah, yeah, and it starts there. I mean, I can go down the loophole of how I got in a regenesis course that I thought was technical, and all of a sudden I'm going and transforming myself first. So I don't want to go into that loophole maybe at another moment. But do you have any last minute thoughts that you'd like to share with the audience here for Regen Week, and last things before we close out the interview?
Let's reinvent, and as part of that, let's reinvent and rethink how we gather. Because the festivals and our gatherings are a very important place to prototype the society that we want to create. Whether you come together for a few hours or a few days, you have the opportunity for that time to live this idealized society. It will not come globally during our lifetimes, likely. But that time that we gather, we have the opportunity to practice it. So let's be conscious of that and use it with intentionality.
Beautiful, beautiful. Well, thank you so much for being here. So lovely to meet you, and I look forward to continuing the conversations. Thank you to the audience, and Victor, talk to you soon. Thank
Hopefully
you.
see you in September in Portugal.
I would love to.
Gathering
I was in
tribes.
Lisbon and I fell in love with it. So I will be happily go back to Portugal anytime.
Wonderful.
So thank you for the invitation.
Thank you.
Wonderful. Well, hi Miranda. Welcome to our Region Week live feed here. How are you doing today?
Excellent.
Awesome. Wonderful to have you here. Honored to have you here. I was super inspired by your talk, but I'm not going to get into that. I'm going to ask you to please maybe introduce yourself to the audience here and maybe you share a little bit more about your work yourself. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I'm Miranda Clendenning. I've been working in the regenerative space since, I think, 2016 when I first heard the term and started working with all of that. Mom of 5, whole systems regenerative community developer.
Beautiful.
I also work in tech and lots of regenerative spaces.
Amazing, amazing. And so we're here for Region Week, and we are, bringing together a number of individuals from really all different industries and different spaces, and that are now all in this regenerative space, a space that has, it's a movement that is growing, and then the word itself is also become a little bit of a buzzword in many cases. And so we wanted to dive deeper into the term regeneration and what it means to the people that are here. So what does regeneration mean in your life? Like what does it mean for you? You just said when was the first time. Was that the first time that you heard it in 2016?
Yeah, and then I started actually speaking about it. I worked with the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, and a lot of sustainability was kind of the buzzword then. And now one of the reasons I can tell it's dawning on the collective a lot is because I'll have my mom and other people just come to me and say, what is a word for something that's beyond sustainable, that's like healing the planet and undoing harm and generating more good than just being sustainable? Regenerative.
Beautiful.
They're like, oh yeah, that's the word. And then they start using it, and they've already realized we need to be going that level, not just sustainable and not doing harm, but really regenerating.
Beautiful. And so what does it mean to you specifically?
Yeah, so there are regenerative efforts going on all around the world, anywhere that you look at, a system that is generating its own wealth, abundance, regenerating. Our cells regenerate. There's regenerative health and well-being. So just looking at, what goes beyond sustainable to actually building and giving back, even in a system like an economic system. If everybody is giving a little more than they're taking, then we're building a system that's regenerating and supporting itself and being generative and regenerative. So going that extra step, undoing, we have done a lot of harm to this planet. So we do have to look at not just starting with sustainable practices now, but how do we heal and regenerate the soil, regenerate all the plants that are growing, undo the harm that's being done as well.
And how do you, and you mentioned, and you went into both the external aspect and the inner aspect that you stated at the moment, regenerating your cells, and then maybe the inner work. How do you feel that we're able to do that we can regenerate the planet, and how does maybe the inner factor, the human connection, the just healing humanity aspect of it have to do with it? I'd love to learn your thoughts a little bit more about that direction of things.
Yeah, I actually work in this a lot, and with ourselves, actually the process of growing younger and regeneration and neural regeneration, cellular regeneration is all a thing that's a big study right now, because it is possible to actually undo harm within our bodies and kind of grow younger, tap into that stem cell point of life and really regenerate. And there's a lot of processes to do that. There's technologies that help us do that. But ourselves, the actual act of death and rebirth in some ways, letting go of old patterns, deprogramming, and then letting the new things come alive that are landing with us, of new thought patterns for positivity and life and how we get along with each other, and just undoing the old that may be harmful and letting it go, letting it die, and birthing a new pattern or way that we bring more life within ourselves, within our bodies, with relationships. And then taking that to a team level, community levels, nation levels, and our whole planet, and looking at how do we regenerate everything that we want to. Our economic systems that can literally grow much more naturally, like a garden where there's no extraction or oppression, but really regenerative, secular circulation of currencies and money and food and resources in ways that are regenerative.
Beautiful, beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. And well, you did just say that is related very much to your work. Can you share a little bit more about how you're expressing that in your work, your organization, and share a little bit more about that as well, so that the audience can be aware?
Yeah. So I work at a global level with a Peace on Earth by 2030 game. We're doing a big game around the world in many countries, and with youth, with adults. It's a game that helps with personal transformation and finding inner peace, and then finding harmony with each other, and then lighting up Peace on Earth zones, which are communities, with the goal of having 10,000 communities that are each working on peace on Earth and what that means to them.
Amazing. Amazing.
So yeah, that's moving along quite quickly. We have a whole technology app, but there's offline versions as well to play the game with each other, and then we calculate how many actions people are taking and do that in a kind of cumulative view. So one round of the peace game going, which it takes about 2 months to play the game all together, but people took about 7,900 actions, just one team playing in this last couple months.
That's exciting.
Around the world.
That is so exciting.
So, yeah, trying to gamify and make it really fun, even though it can be challenging, pushing your growing edges and finding your own inner peace and the things that you have to transform to deprogram and go towards an actually peaceful lifestyle and being peaceful with those around you and learning to work together. We do cooperative efforts like growing food together in a community. In Afghanistan, girls being able to get education and learn to read together when that isn't happening anywhere else. In Africa, teams go from 30 people to 800 overnight. Because the whole town and community will come in and say, yeah, we're supposed to be cooperating to grow food together and we want to do this together. So
amazing. The power of community there that you're seeing. That's beautiful.
It's amazing. And then in Boulder, where I live, we have One World Academy, where we're really focusing on a regenerative, decentralized village. So it's an academy that people come into, go through some of the personal transformation, learning to work together more as teams, and then they can pick different projects that we're doing, events or building projects, food growing projects. There's lots of projects popping up all the time, but kind of using that space as an incubator for how we bring in solutions for regenerative efforts and really learn from thought leaders and what's going on, and then put them into action. Think and do tanks, basically, as people are learning principles of really working together.
Amazing, beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing that incredible work. And now, how can the audience engage in any of these projects? So maybe one thing you just shared that you have offline versions and online versions.
So just go to peace2030.earth. That's the website, peace2030.earth. And if you put contact us, you'll get a hold of me directly.
Okay, awesome.
But you can sign up on there and find out about our info sessions and how to join the game next.
Awesome. I'm excited to look into that. And so what we have here, we're here at RegenWeek again. We're bringing in all of these inspiring individuals in the regeneration space. Maybe I'd like to learn a little bit more about what projects that you've seen here or that you're engaging with are, and you're working in a global organization and having impact already, and maybe like groundbreaking projects. What are you excited about? Have you seen any projects that are you excited about? What are the trends that you're seeing in this direction?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I would say some of the most exciting ones, Core Nexus with Atom Apollo. That technology, we absolutely need it to go the next directions that we're going. We work with Unify doing impact global meditations and impact projects, and with that alone, we have 29,000 impact organizations that are in our network.
Incredible.
But we don't have a way to really work with them yet. We need what they're building with having missions that can have a bounty that philanthropists and impact people can come in and fund, and then project groups.
There.
Yeah,
Amazing.
So,
loving the integration that is going into that.
yeah. And then Mark Kane and what he's working on with Open World Alliance and Phoenix FinTech, and just so much that they're tapping into with resource flow in the future and being able to fund impact projects and groups that are doing boots on the ground effort. Those are two of the amazing ones. Kamara with Masterminding Eden. I really see us all being together a year from now in Puerto Rico with RegenWeek. I love Puerto Rico. Puerto Rico is like a evolutionary leap point, basically, because they had the hurricane come through, and now everybody's looking at how do we get energy self-sufficient, food self-sufficient. Yeah,
I'm Puerto Rican myself. I was born in Puerto Rico, so it's a Puerto Rican Dominican, but
I go every other month since
like,
2018.
and it's a very resilient community there in Puerto Rico. So yeah, I'm excited about that too. And this is something that actually came up during your panel, and you just brought it up now again. It's boots on the ground projects and impact. So coming from me, I'm working in underdeveloped nations like Mexico, like the Dominican Republic, and so where there's things that are very difficult to actually measure impact because the local systems are just not there yet. How are you guys working with that aspect of boots on the ground in nations and governments that are, it's a completely different system that may be happening in developed and First Nations, not like really when you're looking at third world, if you will.
Yeah, well, when tracking impact, we look at things on multi-layers, what's called integral audits and integral accounting, many layers of capital and looking at what's actually making a difference. So for us, like the levels of inspiring cooperation around a unified goal, a bigger unified goal being peace on earth communities, but then that can mean a lot of things underneath. Do you want your goal to be growing food together? And then being able to measure not just the food that's being produced, but the amount of people that are coming in, your social capital, the amount of communication happening, the amount of coordination and cooperation actually happening, how many organizations are coming in to help, are you gathering the resource flow and giving tools for that more? And then the actual planting of gardens, how much food is coming out of it, and then how that's distributed to people. But looking at how is that really affecting the happiness and health of people and families and the whole community itself, and causing a cohesiveness. The connections themselves and the cooperation itself can cause a lot more to happen, even with very little resources. Food growing is one of those start there, and you can go a long ways with where that ends up going. So
amazing. Beautiful to learn that. I'm excited to actually learn more, go into your websites and learn more about the different organizations or projects that you have in the regions that I'm working with. Do you have anything that you would like to share? What can we do for you? How can we help you? And anything that you'd like to share with the audience before we close out the interview here that you would want everybody to know and hear about regeneration and the work you're doing in RegenWeek?
Yeah, I would just say the biggest thing we can do is have hope and faith and know that it is possible. Everything that we're talking about is not only possible, but there is a regeneration renaissance that's going on right now that is happening very big, getting much bigger. To come from hearing this term in 2016 to where we are now, which is, I believe, in the tens of millions, if not hundreds of millions of people already working towards these kind of efforts and healing our planet. And humans are hearing the call of, stop the polluting so much, stop the separation so much, get in tune with earth, grow your own food, be with the people around you. So having that hope and just saying that, spreading that to everybody. There's a serious lack of hope with a lot of people, but the hope we can give to just share that it's truly happening. Yeah. The new world is being built.
A new earth is emerging. And it hasn't RegenWeek been an example of that. We just have had such incredible, inspiring humans. To me, it's it's so moving and inspirational. So thank you so much for being here. Thank you for the work that you're doing. So incredible work out there. And a mother of 5. Wow. I mean, I'm not even going to get into the amount of impact and the motivation behind that as well. So
that's why I do what I do.
There you go. So we have a little bit of it. So you have mother of 5 that's the main driver for what you're doing.
Yeah.
Amazing.
My favorite job.
Awesome. I don't have children, but I have a lot of nieces and nephews, and they are also the reason that drives me as well.
Yeah.
So I look at them and I'm like, I want them to be able to have a planet that they can breathe fresh air, and they can grow up kind of how I felt growing up. And I grew up in farms, big farms in many aspects. So thank you for that. Pleasure to have you here. Inspired to have you here.
Thank you.
And pleasure to meet you.